Hello and welcome to the Sewing Studio. My name's Jeanette and today I'm going to be sharing this project with you all. Now this is one of a pair of cushions I made for my sister. About 18 months ago she moved to a coastal location here in Cornwall, and I made her a couple of cushions to go with her decor where she's gone sort of blues and neutrals. So I'm going to be showing you two blocks. This block is the Frayed 4-patch and this is the Sailboat block, and they're both pieced. So we'll just put those there so you can have a good look at those. Really fun block. I made these with scraps and leftover bits and pieces from my stash, but in particular there were some leftover fabrics from Janet Clare, Ahoy Mahatis, I think her range was called. I think it was the second range she brought out. And I just added some other sort of greys and blues from my stash to make this particular cushion. So it was all just sort of bits and pieces that I was using up. So I've had a little walk around the shop and I've selected Janet Clare's latest range that we've got here, which is called Bon Voyage. So I thought this would work really well for this project as well. And this has also got some nice sort of neutrals and blues and greens and sort of teals in it. So that's what I'm going to be remaking this cushion with here today. So we're going to start with the Frayed 4-patch block, and this is a really simple block. I do a lot using 2.5-inch squares and strips, so this is perfect for using those up. So it just takes 4 2.5 by 4.5-inch strips of background, and that's for these bits here. And then you want 8 2.5-inch squares for the actual sort of 4-patch and the surrounding blocks. So I've got these pre-cut here just to save a little bit of time, and I've made my 4-patch already. And literally the block goes together really quickly. I'm going to put that one there, and then I'm going to have 2 more fabrics. I think we'll put them like that up there with 1 more. So as you can see, you've got 8 coloured squares and 4 2.5 by 4.5-inch backgrounds. So really simple. As I said, I normally start by sewing the 4-patch, and I've done that already, but we're just going to take these to the machine and sew. So I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch. I was a bit worried then that I hadn't got the fabric the right way around. I was just checking. And then the 4-patch. And I'm just going to clip those apart and add the second. Now I've already sewn the bottom strip. Now I think I'm going to have those lines going in a different direction, just to be a bit quirky. I say, if you are a pinner, do pin before you take them to the machine. I don't pin very much. So we've sewn those now. I'm just going to finger press these. I tend to do this quite a lot. I only take it to the iron once the block is fully assembled, and I'm just going to finger press and press towards the background fabric. So that's that top one. And if you've got one of the seam presses, I know at home I've got a Clover seam press. They work really well with this as well. But that should be enough. And there's our block, and we're ready to put that together. Now I always start with the bottom row up onto the middle. I just tend to find that's how I work. I'm just going to match that seam before I take it to the machine. And so I'm ready to go. And I just sort of hold that so it doesn't move. But of course, feel free to use a pin. I should say, one of the reasons I don't use pins is because I get a bit blasé, thinking, oh, I've pinned it, it won't move. And quite often fabrics do move. So I tend to be a bit more accurate if I don't pin. I'm not quite happy with how that seam's gone. Oh yeah, that feels better. I could do with a little tool to get in underneath that little corner of fabric. I'm going to grab the other piece and add that one as well. Just feeling that that seam has flipped a little bit, the underneath one, so I'm just making sure I'm happy with where it is. And then I'm lining up my next seam. And there's the block all put together. So I'll take that to the iron and give it a press. Oh, I think that's upside down. Look, I'm looking at my trees. I have got a directional fabric on there, so I do have to be a little bit careful with that one. So I'm going to put that one just to one side while we work on the second block, which is the boat block. And I've got some of this prepared already, which we'll lay out. But the first thing I'm going to show you is how to do the half square triangles. Now for this, you need 4 half square triangles, and I make them scrappy for the sails, and then 2 half square triangles to make the boat block. So I've made the boat block ones here already, but they're all made in exactly the same way, and I've got those made, but I'm going to show you how I made them. I'm just going to take a background 2.5-inch square and a colour. I've decided my sails are all going to be green. I'm going to draw a line, and that's our sewing line. I'm actually going to sew just slightly to the outside edge, to the right-hand side of that line. Look, I used a pin there. Now I'm actually going to start off on a scrap of fabric, because what can often happen with these blocks is that corner piece, I just need to go a little bit further, that corner piece can quite often just get pushed down. And then we're going to trim that other side of the ruler. And a little bit of a wobbly seam there, but it should be fine. And then for now I'm just going to finger press this back, and this you can just press to the darker fabric. Now if you just notice, I'm just going to show you on this cushion the sails, because on this boat on the bottom I've got the sails going in this one direction, and in the top they're going in the opposite direction, so it actually looks like the boats are going to sort of be crossing each other, but you can choose which way you want your sails to go. But that's what I've done on that block. So you need to make 4 of those for the sails. Oh, that's falling down. And 2 for the boat. The centre of the boat as well then just uses a 4.5 by 2.5 inch rectangle, and the sail blocks, the top of the sail blocks are finished off here with 2.5 by 4.5 inch strips. So let's just attach the 2 bottom of the boats. Just make sure, let me just show you this, just make sure that they're going in the right direction. You want the half square triangles pointing towards the boat block. You don't want any sort of funky bits happening with your boat. So just make sure they're both pointing up when you sew those on. I think my foot pedal had slipped away a bit from me there. I was pressing down and nothing was happening. So I'm just going to line that back up, make sure it's facing the right way. Yep, I'm happy with that, and that's the boat block sewn. So I'm going to press towards the middle of the boat. The seams will probably naturally want to go there anyway, because you've got the resistance of these seams on the half square triangles. And then for the C, now you'll see on this cushion, I just used one solid piece of fabric. This came from my scraps, and that was a 2.5 by 8.5 inch strip. But because I'm using all the fabrics out of the charm pack for this, I've decided to piece the C for this one. So I've just used 4 2.5 inch squares, and I've used the navy blue. So if we just attach these side rectangles onto our sails, we'll have the 3 component parts to our block. Just checking which was the right and which was the wrong side of the fabric. Sometimes it's quite difficult to tell. And once again, I'm just going to finger press towards those outside background rectangles. And then we've got the 3 strips that are ready to go. Now I tend to put the C up onto the boat first. Now I will just show you that. I've pressed that middle seam open. It doesn't need to match with anything. So it lies a bit flatter if you press that one open. I've just got a directional fabric there, so I'm just going to make sure I get that in the right position. And because I've pressed the seams in on the boat block, on the C blocks, I've pressed those outer seams out. And then they'll nest. Now I may just pin this. Because it's quite a long piece. So I've just pinned at the start, and I am just going to pin where that second match point seam is. So you can see there I've just got the 2 pins, and that should be enough to hold my fabrics into position. I don't know why I put the first pin in, because as soon as I get to the machine I tend to take it out again. But it was there for a while. It did its job. Take that second pin out. These are really nice fine pins, but I don't sew over pins. I'm just going to make sure that bit of fabric's sitting nice and flat. Just going to check that I'm happy with how those seams came out, and I am. So now we're ready for the final seam to assemble the block. And once again, these seams should nest. So we've got these going out and the ones underneath going in. I'm going crazy today with the pins, look. I've got 2 more. Oh, and then we drop the block on the floor. That happens in real life too, doesn't it? Now I'm going to take that first pin out, and I'm just going to check that I'm still happy with where that seam is, and I am. There's nothing to match with that centre seam, so just make sure that stays nice and flat. Oh, that's turned out really nice. I don't know why I'm surprised. They always turn out nice, and I always think, oh, that's so lovely. There we are, and there's the boat block. Okay, so we're just going to bring these blocks over to press them. Now I like to press from the reverse. I like to see what my seams are doing first. And if you just see, I'm just putting a little bit of tension on the fabric just to make sure that I'm not ironing in any sort of tucks and creases on the front. And then once I've got the back done, then I turn it over and give it a press from the front. That's come out really nice. I'm loving those colours. I'm just going to set these seams. Now what I'll probably do with these seams here, because there's quite a lot of bulk, is press them open, like I've done in the centre there of the sails. But for now I'm just going to press them to one side. Now they're probably going to want to go towards the boat, because there's least resistance there of other seams. But I'll decide properly where to press that seam once I come to join the blocks together. So press it from the back. All we're looking for is a really nice flat block. And I think we've achieved it. So there's our 2 blocks. So for the cushion, you want to make 2 boat blocks and 2 of the frayed 4-patch blocks. Set your boat blocks opposite to each other. Let me just bring the cushion in to show you there. So you've got boat blocks in either corner and the frayed 4 patches either end. And then next time we'll have a look at some ideas for quilting. I'll talk you through how I've quilted this one, but some other ideas for how you want to quilt. And also we'll turn it into a cushion, and I do a lapped zip. So we've got a nice zip closure there with a concealed zip. So we'll have a look at that next time. If you want to give these blocks a go, as always, if you want to put your pictures up through our social media, I'd be really pleased to see what you're all making. And I hope you'll join me next time here in the sewing studio.